And rolling.
All right, this one should be entitled "The Kings of Tupelo: Cast of Characters." Period. Who is Paul Kevin Curtis? With a question mark. All right, so three, two, one. The Kings of Tupelo. I thought it would be a really good idea to run through for you a list of the cast of characters. This is actually going to be a little more involved than I thought. Today is the 27th. I should be able to have this finished by the time that it airs, the actual series airs. This first one's going to be about Paul Kevin Curtis. Who is Paul Kevin Curtis? I'm not really that familiar with that guy, actually. Never part of the same scene that I was in. There was no natural crossover between my COI and his, other than his brother Jack Curtis. And the details on that is that Jack managed an insurance brokerage for one of the companies that I too represented. Jack, in order to keep the marketing kickbacks from that company's lead generation, found a loophole to the exception that you can't bonus yourself what's called lead money. So he hired family to run, I put that in quotes, the lead company. Family, meaning Paul Kevin Curtis, his brother, who really did nothing, but he was a name on paper, and Kevin Curtis's ex-wife, Laura, who managed that fake company. Now, in 2007, I added that same insurance company to my business holdings, which included, of course, Jack as the branch manager and Laura as the sales manager. I had never met Curtis until then, which is 2007. The primary way in which he's relevant to this case, the Kings of Tupelo story, how he's relevant to the KC letters, is that it was him that was the original arrested suspect. He was arrested for actually being the mailer. Literally, his arrest affidavit is for the mailing, not the making, but the mailing of the KC letters, considered to be threats, I guess, even though if you look at the wording of it, it doesn't look like he was very specific about it. It's really not much of a threat. It's kind of vague, but still with good reason, because he was the mailer. The FBI kicked him around in court for a few days until his attorney, Christy McCoy, made a deal with the DOJ. So what was that deal? The deal was to help the DOJ get Dusky, help the DOJ get me. And so he, through McCoy, he agreed. And then he was released. Went on kind of a media tour to blame Dusky, and so he did. Went on Good Morning America, Today Show, just pretty much everywhere there was a camera with a wide enough angle with a wide enough lens to fit his giant face. He literally told them that he had told the FBI all along this, and I can't do a Kevin Curtis voice because I don't really know it very well, but I don't know anything. I don't know anything about rice, and I don't even eat rice. I don't know anything about anything. I'm clueless, but Dusky did it. Now, think about that for a second. What's the obvious first thing that any self-respecting reporter should have immediately asked? Obvious. Even to a child, it would be obvious. Well, Mr. Paul Kevin Curtis, you claim you don't know anything about anything. How could you possibly point to any particular person at all? Out of 8 billion people on the planet, how could the one guy who claims to be clueless actually claim, Dusky did it? Hmm? But of course, no reporter bothered because there are no self-respecting journalists anymore. Seriously, see if you can find even one excerpt where that obvious question was actually asked. It wasn't. I mean, why bother finding out the truth? Your readers or your viewers are they don't care, I guess. Just after he was arrested, the street level FBI, who hadn't yet been informed by their upper management that they were just kind of being used in a larger op, they released his background to us, and we found out about it, via the press, and it was all very weird stuff, really. I honestly Cannot think of anyone in my life who can come close to any of these kind of to this kind of history or claim. First off, the feds and their sycophantic press, they revealed that Kevin Curtis was an Elvis impersonator by occupation. And that's as they put it. That's not his hobby, but they claimed it was his actual job, his actual occupation. I don't know about you, but where? Where who's hiring Elvis? That's just strange. That's strange enough, really, and because it's not a job. Who on earth in North Mississippi or anywhere else in your town or whoever is hiring Elvis impersonators? When's the last ad you've seen for an Elvis impersonator, registered Elvis impersonator? What employer in Tupelo is doing it? Lazy Boy? Do they suddenly need Elvis impersonators for some reason? Toyota? Cooper Tires? McDonald's? Hey, media, what the heck are you talking about? That's not a job. Probably not even in Vegas. I'll bet you'd have a hard time finding a need for Elvis impersonators, even in Vegas. Anyway, um, you can't trust the press. You can't trust the FBI to tell the truth anyway. He does claim that he was, get this, I'm not making this up. He does claim that he was once a janitor at the North Mississippi Medical Center, which is the hospital complex in.
This call is from a federal prison.
Until they fired him for, get this, essentially spouting lies about them to the public. Let me restate this so that it's clear to you. The janitor of the Tupelo Hospital was fired after just a few days on the job. Fired because he was publicly spouting lies about the hospital. Are you kidding this? Fired for publicly making false claims about his employers, kind of slandering them. And it's my understanding he still is. But before the janitor got fired, he found a way to kind of feed his narcissistic lust for fame by organizing a newspaper article about how he and the hospital's new janitor can sing Elvis tunes. Well, whoop-de frickin' do. Only in Tupelo would anyone give a damn about that. I can go to any karaoke club, any karaoke night at any backwater bar and see karaoke performance, Butcher, Kentucky Rain, or Blue Suede Shoes, or whatever. What it does show us is that, well, I mean, it's kind of obvious what that shows us. The FBI's background and the press told us then the hospital had even gotten a restraining order against that guy. He's not allowed anywhere near the place. A hospital. You imagine? Have you ever heard of anyone at all, who is so bad that they're not allowed to go to the hospital? I sure haven't. It was revealed that he's not the only person who had legally acted to get a court order against him. His own family member. I think the news and the prosecutors in court revealed that Kevin Curtis's very own sister had a restraining order against him. Now, most people in this country have never gone so far as to file seeking such a judgment against another human being. I certainly haven't. No one in my family ever has. I don't know a single person in my life who's even thought of seeking such an order against another human being. How bad does someone have to be to do such a drastic thing, especially against family? Harassment, threats, stalking. Turns out it was all of the above. So I'm going to finish this in part 2, 3, maybe even a part 4 to this one, because this particular character is actually quite involved. Who is Paul Kevin Curtis? This is part 2. I guess, because this is going to take quite a few to get through, and I apologize for that. But, as I was just saying in part 1, talking about all the different restraining orders, there were multiple restraining orders that were placed against him. That's just strange. I don't know anyone that's ever done that to anyone. It's just a bizarre thing to me anyway. But it was revealed then, in 2013, that Kevin Curtis had been harassing and stalking and threatening people for years, and until now never really held accountable for it. Actually, he still hasn't Guess what his modus operandi is, his operational bias for my colleagues? Uh, Sending emails and letters. That's right. For example, Reverend Mike Hicks was a man who was threatened by Paul Kevin Curtis. When the Reverend had refused to allow Paul Kevin Curtis to address his church's congregation about some cockamamie scheme that Curtis was talking about, claiming the selling of body parts on the black market, which I suspect was probably a conspiracy that was birthed from his bitterness at being fired from the hospital, who he now smeared as part of that conspiracy theory. But Reverend Hicks wasn't the only one. Who else? What are some of the other folks that Kevin Curtis wrote about that hospital body parts conspiracy? Well, one of those people, as it turns out, we learned, was Senator Roger Wicker. Now, I have absolutely no idea why Kevin Curtis would pester Senator Wicker about it, or what was his beef with Senator Wicker. Another person we learned that he had written about it was President Obama. Now, I would not have had any way of knowing that. I don't get President Obama's mail, so I would have no idea who writes him or what the hell they're writing about, which, by the way, is important later. Now, this one's interesting. One of the elements of Curtis's nonsense that kind of became part of all of this was that a local funeral home was complicit in the black market body parts scheme. Steve Holland told GQ magazine 2013 that Kevin Curtis blamed, I don't know if this is true or not, this is just what Holland says, so it's doubtful anyway, blamed Sadie Holland, probably Steve too, for being part of that body parts scheme. Well, who is Sadie Holland? She is a woman who owned a funeral home with her son, who was an undertaker by the name Steve Holland. But she was also a justice court judge, and the court testimony of 2013 revealed that Sadie, this same woman that Curtis was publicly kind of blasting as part of his body parts conspiracy, is also the same exact judge who had sentenced Paul Kevin Curtis to a year in jail. A year in jail. For what? Well, apparently, assaulting the Lee County District Attorney, and with a gun, over a guitar performance or something. Listen, folks, you can't make this stuff up, even if you tried to.
This call is from a federal prison.
Thanks, we knew that. It's just too crazy. Everything surrounding that place is crazy. Listen, I'm in a U.S. federal prison right now. People all around me are certified nuts. My cellie, I put that word in quotes, is a guy who has 8 life sentences plus 240 years. And he's still less crazy than most of the people in that place. So I mean it. Anyway, then it was revealed that Curtis, even by his own admission, actually was unemployed. He was unemployed and on Social Security disability, living in a government housing project, which is where they arrested him. Well, what's the disability, you ask? Well, good, because no one in the media bothered to ask. He had been mentally disabled, or deemed mentally disabled, by some judge somewhere, I presume. And this obviously means that his employment at the lead company, as hired by his brother Jack, was illegal, making it fraud, making it that the people who committed that fraud would be Jack and Kevin Curtis and whatever attorneys helped him get that, either the Sheltons or Christy McCoy, meaning whichever attorney applied for that monthly Social Security disability check for Kevin Curtis also committed fraud, since he claimed that not only was he unemployed, but he couldn't be employed, even though he was, on paper, employed by Jack. Anyway, I wish all that was just all there was, but unbelievably, there's more. Now, here's where our COI began to, cross a couple of times. In 2007, he showed up at a closed meeting, which was for agents only, which was for insurance matters. Ironically enough, that meeting was right across the street from the very hospital from which he was banned. Uh, I can't make this stuff up, folks. The only reason he showed up at this meeting, he claims, or still claims, was to meet me. Now think about something. The only way he could have even known about it, or known that I would probably be there, was his wife or ex-wife, whichever she is. Only she, an agent, could have actually told him that. At one point, then, on that day, he did approach me to convince me to run a news story in the newspaper making his black market body parts accusation against the Northeast Mississippi Hospital. I swear all of this is for real. Now, I guess since he knew that I owned that newspaper, that I would loan my voice, my printed voice, to his delusions. But I didn't. I declined. It was not right for business. It was not the right political move for me. Plus, he, even to this day, offers no details whatsoever which can actually be followed up on. In other words, there's nothing about what he's saying to get a hold of, to find out exactly or even roughly what the hell he's talking about. Nothing. There's not been anyone ever come forward to say, hey, I lost my arm somewhere last week, but today I think I saw it on some other fella. There's been no report anywhere of someone discovering their liver at the checkout stand of some black market somewhere. And by the way, where is this black market? Do they have home delivery? There's no detail to this story that he ever gives which allows someone to kind of dig around, turn over rocks, or follow breadcrumbs, whatever, discover, oh, so that's what he's talking about. You understand? Because the press doesn't care. They just let him spew it. So no, his claims are always tied to nothing because they're BS. They're lies. They are complete fabrications. So why on earth would I have allowed that to go to print in my newspaper? Seriously, why? Unlike CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Huffington Post, ABC, Public Radio, PRN, CBS, GQ Magazine, Al Jazeera, every other newspaper on the planet, including everything owned by Gannett and the Associated Press, I'm not going to co-sign lies. They do. They obviously do, and they have. We also learned in 2013 that a few years before Sadie Holland had sentenced Kevin Curtis to jail, that he had held a woman hostage at gunpoint in Chicago. Now, at the moment, I still have more to go, believe it or not. So there's going to have to be at least a part 3, so just stand by for that one. This is the Kings of Tupelo cast of characters. Who is Paul Kevin Curtis? This is part 3. In part 1 and part 2, we covered quite a bit. Some stuff that's kind of unbelievable. I bet you there's no one in your life that you can say comes anywhere close to all of that. But here we are in part 3, and believe it or not, there's actually more. One of the things we learned about in 2013 was that there was some guy who lived in Boonville, which is a kind of a Tupelo sub-rural, who Curtis had claimed was some sort of a rival, using that word. And Paul Kevin Curtis claims this guy burned down his house. We learned that he also claimed that the agency and some unidentified G-men, and I'm using quotes, had poisoned his pets, poisoning people with chemtrails, and even blew up his car, according to his claims, and apparently without him in it, I guess. None of that makes sense, and maybe there are a few things, a few details there, trying to get a hold of and say, oh, well, maybe this is what he's talking about. But even those don't offer sort of nefarious explanation. The house fire that he talks about, it seems, was just a kitchen fire, probably accidentally started by him. Pets, well, you know what? Eventually pets just die every time. Every pet. Chemical trail poisoning, stop it. Enough of that nonsense already, people. Stop that nonsense. It's just simple condensation. Get over it. Now, the blowing up his car bit, that one's just plain silly. And if we were going to blow up his car, why wouldn't he be in it? Or was he? When it blew up, was he driving it, or did it just did he just blow the motor? Was there a fuel line leak? Was there a fume ignition while refueling? How did it happen? See, he never gives any details to actually follow up on. I guess is fine, since no one in the press anywhere has even bothered to ever try. No one bothers even getting a single detail about it. They just let that claim just kind of hang in the air as if that's all that there needs to be said, and that's silly. Now, as far as his hobby goes, we learned in the court filings that he'd only done one, that is a single karaoke performance in pursuit of his cosplay act, and that was in years, and that he blamed that lack of, I guess we can call it work, on interference from people who were upset with his body parts claim. Now, according to what everyone is actually telling me, is in the Kings of Tupelo trailer, Paul Kevin Curtis actually makes the claim now that I am the one who, quote, made his life a living hell. That I also started his kitchen fire and blew up his car and even shot his dog, get this, with a tranquilizer dart. I seriously consider, by the way, that it is way beneath my dignity to reply to any of that. And I'm a guy sitting in max custody in a U.S. federal penitentiary. But this world isn't full of rational thinkers, really, so that's why there are so many reporters around. So if I don't reply, then some idiot will consider that I concede those claims as if they're admissions. So I'll be clear, just as I was in court in 2013. All of that is nothing but lies. It's untrue. Complete fabrications. I never made that guy's life a living hell. I barely even knew he existed. He was not part of my life or in my thoughts at all. There were a couple of occasions that he would find a way to intrude into my life, and I'd just kind of slap it down like a mosquito or a gnat, and then move on with my actual life and actual kind of important matters. I did not set fire to that guy's house. Never even knew that guy had a house. In fact, last I knew, as Jack, his brother, had told me, Kevin Curtis was actually living with his parents in Birmingham. I never blew up his car. I don't know the circumstances because given any details, but probably nobody did. Sometimes cars blow up. If he had blown up his car, there'd be no trace of it, and there'd be no trace of him to even make that claim, which is silly anyway. But unlike him, I don't have to convince anybody of anything, because I know me and I know my life very well. His accusing me of that, who the hell does he think he's kidding? I know better. Anyway, it never happened. And despite what he claims in the Kings of Tupelo, I never tranquilized his dog. I don't even know his dog. I'd never do that to someone's pet dog. I happen to love dogs. Dogs are good people.
This call is from a federal prison.
Dogs are good people. Dogs are better people than most people. That friendship, his friendship, I'm reluctant to say with that dog, may be the one thing which keeps Kevin Curtis sane. Except that he, isn't. And not even dogs are superheroes. The other things I know about this dude are not from his reported background, but actually from personal experience, which is very, very limited. I only ever seen him or interacted with him 3 times, really, maybe 4. But those times were kind of significant, mostly involving his harassment of me, trying to intrude on me into my life, into my circle, even going so far, literally, I know this sounds bizarre, but this is what happened. Literally impersonate me, stealing not my identity exactly, but my life. It's like this guy was trying to get my attention, my favorable attention. Here's an example. I was once asked by a fellow Mensa if we had a new member in Mississippi Mensa. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mensa is essentially it's an organization of people who are formally certified as genius level IQ, or thereabouts, higher even. The reason I was asked was because Kevin Curtis had posted somewhere a fake certificate of membership from Mensa. But what Kevin Curtis didn't know that I was instantly aware that it was fake because I was an officer in the local chapter of Mississippi Mensa. I've been a national member Mensa for a while. In fact, I designed, hosted, and ran the Mensa website on my server, which listed every single Mensa member in Mississippi, their Mensa numbers, and their contact information. Let's be honest, there really aren't that many of us in Mississippi. Mississippi maybe had like 12 at that time, and he definitely is not one. He's not on the list. He didn't know that I would know that. Maybe I think he thought I'd hear about it and reach out to him and say, "Hey there, fellow Minson," but there was no chance of that because it was a fraud, plain and simple. And when I called him out on it in an email, he didn't like it so much. Circa 2010, somehow that email has now become semi-famous, which is also, I think, stupid. We now call that the dumbass memo, I think it's called. So once again, though, I was on his enemies list, just like Reverend Hicks, like Sadie Holland, just like Senator Wicker, and just like President Obama. Now, I moved to Tupelo full-time in 2001. KC letters were in 2013, so out of over a dozen years, I only encountered this dude a few times, and each time was very brief. There was no rivalry, unlike what the press keeps falsely reporting. I don't understand that. Stop doing that, press. It makes you look silly. Rivalry about what? Music. Some reporters claim that. Nope, that's not possible. He was not actually part of any actual real music scene, and even the few cosplay karaoke gigs he did during that 12 or 13 years were tiny. They were local only, they were invite only kind of events. There were no ticket sales, there was no real venue, there was no real scene involved. One of my extracurricular retirement gigs was, in fact, the music business, but I was not local. Did a few festivals on the larger stages and events in Tupelo, but most of the performances were national tours all over the entire country. All over the entire country, really. I can finish this up in a part 4. Don't worry, part 4 is not going to last very long, probably maybe less than a minute. And then we get a chance to move on to some of the other characters, like Steve Holland and some of the others. So stand by for part 4. All right, there's some stuff I had forgotten from the previous videos about Paul Kevin Curtis. This will be a quick one. I think it's important to remind you again, by the way, that Paul Kevin Curtis was fired from the hospital because of his pathological obsession with attention seeking. And his typical MO is by fabricating lies, the kind with intent to cause harm to people. Now, this is not my opinion. This is historical fact. It wouldn't matter if I was ever on the planet. That's him, and that's his historical fact. And maybe that's part of whatever it is that's his officially documented mental disability. And maybe that's of a completely different manifestation. That firing and other serious repercussions of his actions are more than just his delusions, but they're also his intent. Almost always intended to be harmful to someone and to be deceitful. Even to this day, at this very moment, even as the Kings of Tupelo is being released and the trailer is running, he's still at that deceit. There were instantly 100 different personalities on Facebook discussing the Kings of Tupelo trailer, just the promotional. 80 of those were all one guy, posing as the others, the other 80 different phony Facebook accounts. All 80 were finding ways to praise Kevin Curtis and to blast me, kind of hyping him. The irony is that the one guy behind all those 80 fake Facebook accounts is Kevin Curtis himself. He's actually catfishing himself. His various account personalities, they even talk to each other. I put the word talk in quotes there. They even talk to each other, publicly, of course, not sending messages to each other, just to kind of elevate his...
This call is from a federal prison.
And to demean others, such as the fake account literally called, get this, Billy Bobby. That's actually him. Billy Bobby is not actually a person. it's one of Kevin Curtis's multiple personalities, I guess. Now, I'm in a federal prison. I have no Facebook. I have no internet, and even I know that. So his deceit is really fooling no one, but he still does it. It's a pathological self-obsession. I call it lame syndrome, LAME, which really just stands for, hey, look at me. So why did he participate in this whole thing? Well, it's very simple. His attention-seeking behavior. This is what I need to remind you of. To the Good Morning America and the Today Show and to others in 2013, he actually told you in public that this arrest that he, is so suffering, that this arrest was actually the best thing that ever happened to him. He said he was going to get book deals and movie deals. So that's his rationale for all of this at this moment. Anyway, that's just something I had forgotten before. Probably should have brought it up to you. I'm looking forward to his book deal and his movie deal. The best thing that has ever happened to him was this case and this arrest. And now we are expected to believe that we have reason to feel sorry for him? Stop. It's one or the other there, fella. Pick one.